idea when he told Jesus, "Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher who has come from God, because no one could perform the signs that you're doing if God were not with him." John 3:2. The miracles Jesus performed tell us a great deal about himself, about Jesus. Obviously, they tell us, as Nicodemus put it, he was a teacher who has come from God. I think there's a good deal to be gained by studying the miracles that Jesus performed, but first let me put your mind at rest. Let me explain that it's not my intention to examine closely every recorded miracle of Jesus. That would take several lessons to do and much more time than you'd sit still for, I'm quite sure. Rather, it is my desire to look at the real meanings of these miracles, of a few of the miracles, and of the miracles as a whole, and derive faith and appreciation for the one who performed them. That I hope we can do. To do this, I want to consider first the reality of the miracles, their characteristics, their purpose. So let us think first about the reality of the miracles. Did Jesus really work things, do things that no other person could do? This is a vital question because the case for Christianity rests on it. Did Jesus really work miracles? If he did, then his claim to deity should never be called into question. If he didn't, then what should we think of him? Several theories have been suggested by various individuals to try to account for the mighty works of Jesus without admitting that they really were miracles. I'll mention just two or three of these to you. Not for the purpose of taking each of these arguments and refuting the reality of the miracles, but I just want us to learn what we can about them. First, there's the fraud theory. Just simply that Jesus was a fraud, that he was an accomplished sleight-of-hand trickster. He was good at prestidigitation. There's a theory then of natural causes, that natural causes brought about some of the things that he claimed were miracles, but the causes were obscured from the people. Another theory is that the people of that time were just superstitious and gullible, and they were more likely to believe than the more sophisticated people would. Finally, I want to tell you a little bit about one called the Hume theory, H-U-M-E. David Hume was a Scottish philosopher, lived from 1711 to 1776. But the basis of he wrote several articles about this, but the basis of it was the argument that the experiences of millions of people can be said to contain nothing miraculous, such as the raising of the dead. Then the testimony of two or three must be considered to be of no value. Kind of a majority wins argument against the miracles. Those are just a sampling of the theories, but they all have one thing in common. They all try to explain the miracles of Jesus. They do not refute that he did great things, but they try to explain how he did them without working a miracle. So in effect, they cast their lots with those in New Testament times who were forced to admit that in fact a notable miracle has been done, and we cannot deny it. That's Acts 4:16, I'm sorry. We, of course, truly believe that Jesus did indeed work miracles. I don't have to try to convince you of that. I know that all of us here believe that Jesus truly did work great miracles. But let's consider some of the connotations or some of the characteristics about miracles. Just what were these things that we now refer to as miracles? First thing we need to do is admit that the word miracle is a little bit difficult to define, partly because of the different New Testament Greek words that are translated variously in the New Testament to describe a miracle, and partly due to the different kinds of acts that were called miracles, that we call them miracles today. Let me mention the fact that in the Greek of the New Testament there are 3 words that are variously translated with the general term miracles. One of these words is the Greek word teros, in English letter characters T-E-R-A-S, teros, and is generally translated by the English word wonder, or plural wonders. This word points up the unusual and exceptional character of the deed and the astonishment that is produced by it. It makes you wonder. That's the meaning of the word teros. It makes you wonder. Another word for miracle is dunamis. Dunamis in the Greek, which literally means power or strength. We get our words dynamite and dynamo from the word dunamis in the Greek. This word signifies the power that's necessary to perform such a thing, such a deed. And then the third word is, in the original language, is semion, S-E-M-I-O-N in English characters, and it's usually translated sign or signs. And that indicates God's presence, a sign that God's power is being used. It's kind of like a neon light, a neon sign, that's flashing, miracle, 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 It's a sign. In the first great gospel sermon, Peter used all 3 of these words in one sentence in reference to Jesus. He said, "Fellow Israelites, listen to this. Jesus of Nazareth was a man accredited by God to you by wonders, miracles, wonders, and signs, which God did among you through him, as you yourselves know." Acts 2:22. When Peter said that Jesus did miracles, wonders, and signs, he was saying that he did indeed powerful acts, amazing and unusual acts, and highly significant acts. The significant comes from the word signs. These were signified things. Next, we want to look at the many different kinds of miracles that Jesus performed. Some were miracles over nature, like changing water into wine, John 2, or instantly calming a stormy sea, Matthew 8, walking on the water, Mark 4, and withering a fig tree, Matthew 14. Signs over nature, miracles over nature. Another kind of miracle was the healing miracles, and I think it's clear that he did more of these than any of the other kinds of miracles. He healed many people of various ailments, various diseases. He caused blind people to see, crippled people to walk, paralyzed people to have the use of their limbs again, and many, many more healing miracles. Still another kind of miracle was the multiplication of food. On 2 occasions, he caused food to be multiplied so that just a little bit of food fed thousands of people. Miraculous. Then, of course, there were the resurrection miracles, such as raising a 12-year-old girl who had just died an hour or so before. The raising of Lazarus, who had been dead and in the grave for 4 days. Now, with these different kinds of miracles in mind, we can approach the question of just what these miracles were with a little better footing. So, still, the word miracle is kind of hard to define. A fellow by the name of James Orr, I don't really know anything about him, but he put it in these words. First, before I read his definition, let me ask you, how long can you hold your breath? I'd like for you to try to hold your breath while I read this definition. Okay? It may suffice to define miracle, let me start over. It may suffice to define miracle as any deviation from or transcendence of the order of nature due to the interposition of a supernatural cause. Wow. Now does that cloud or clarify? Another guy, Wilbur M. Smith, defines miracles as, here we go again, an event which never could have been the result of the working of the laws of nature as we understand them, but is as of such an extraordinary character that it requires for its cause the intervention of a supernatural being. That is, an event which man himself cannot duplicate and which cannot be accounted for by any naturalistic cause. Well, I guess they tried the best they could to define miracles, but they don't help a whole lot. If you took time and dissected or tried to diagram those sentences, we don't do that anymore, do we? Diagram sentences. It's kind of a shame. But they were doing the best they could, I guess. One other, a simpler definition by an unknown author is this: a miracle is an event where the only antecedent is the divine will. I like that one. I like that one. Well, now let's think for a few minutes about the characteristics of the miracles of Jesus. These deeds were referred to by signs, wonders, and mighty works, have their best definition really in looking at the characteristics. First, the miracles of Jesus are an inseparable part of the gospel narratives. We need to remember that. That is to say, they're a part and parcel of the life of Christ. The supernatural works that he did appear as a natural part of his life and his activity. If you were to cut out of the life of Jesus, as mentioned in the Gospels, all of the miraculous element, you destroy the continuity of the whole story of the gospel. Whatever else may be said, this must be admitted, that the evangelists Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John depicted a supernatural life. That which they depicted is one great miracle, and if you attempt to remove the miraculous from it, you'll find it all just evaporates. The miracles and the gospel stand or fall together. Second characteristic is this: the miracles of Jesus are not unreasonable or silly in any way. It's not embarrassing. They make sense. They had purpose and meaning. They were not just doing things to be doing things. A third characteristic is this: the miracles of Jesus bear remarkable restraint. I mean by that they're not accompanied by fanfare, either at the time of their performance or later when the written narratives were made. In other words, nobody was saying, "Hey, look at us, we're going to perform mighty works here. Come around, watch." That's quite a contrast to both the miracle stories in other than the Bible literature and also the present day so-called miracle workers. They get a lot of fanfare. Jesus didn't need the fanfare. He didn't use that kind of technique. Another characteristic is this: the miracles of Jesus were not done in secret, but publicly in the presence of many witnesses. Now, as far as we can determine, Jesus never performed a miracle unless witnesses were there. We don't read of anything like that. Most of his miracles were done before the eyes of multitudes of people. And still another characteristic: the miracles of Jesus were complete and lasting. They were not imperfect or fleetingly temporary. He really worked miracles of healing, and the people really were healed. And he did all of these other things that people could see, and nothing changed. I mean, they never went back to the kind of situation they had before the miracle was worked. Still more, a couple of things here. The objectives or purposes. We'll mention more about the purposes in just a moment. But the objectives are in harmony with Christ's absolute unselfishness. He is never represented as having worked a miracle on his own behalf or to benefit himself. Never. He was unselfish about it. He didn't use his miraculous power to help himself. And finally, the miracles of Jesus were done independently of other people. By this I mean sometimes he may have called on others to do something in connection with the miracle, like go to the pool of Siloam and wash the mud off your eyes, or just asking them, do you have the faith to do this? But their connection was, they did nothing to initiate or use any power of their own in connection with the miracle. Sometimes Jesus called on them to do something, but this only influenced his willingness to perform the miracles. It didn't provide any power for Jesus to use. It was all his own power. Well, now, let's go to the big overarching question. Why in this world did Jesus work miracles? Why did he do them at all? What was the purpose of the miraculous in his life? Well, to answer this, I first want to recall about when John the Baptist was imprisoned and became discouraged, and he began to wonder about Jesus, and he sent his disciples from the prison to Jesus to ask, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" Jesus replied, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, those who have the leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble or doubt on account of me." What is he saying? He's saying that these miracles had a purpose. And one of the purposes, I think the main purpose, as we shall see in a moment, is that proof that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. At the tomb of Lazarus, just before he raised him from the dead, he prayed, "Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you hear me always. I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." John 11. John said that about all of the signs in his gospel, he said this, "These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name." John 20:31, last verse of John's gospel. So there it is, the real reason. The miracles of Jesus were credentials God gave him to prove that he came from God, that he was and is the Son of God. This, I believe, was the primary reason for the miraculous in the life and ministry of Jesus. To prove who he is, to prove who he was. Now, other purposes may be considered for the performing of some of the miracles by Jesus, but they're secondary to his primary purpose, I believe. Jesus was compassionate and loving and kind, and so when people came to him with various illnesses or ailments that were really troubling for them, Jesus felt for them, and he loved them, and so he healed them. But his miracles were first and foremost to prove that he was the Son of God. Well, that's basically the lesson I wanted to share with you, but I want to conclude this lesson about the miracles of Jesus with a quotation from C.S. Lewis. You've heard it before, probably. You've read it before if you've read anything of C.S. Lewis's, but I like this statement. He said, "I'm trying here to prevent anyone from saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him, about Jesus. That is, I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said these sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level with the man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must take your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something else. You can shut him up for food, you can spit at him, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come up with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. Amen.
Amen.
I hope these thoughts about the miracles of Jesus were helpful to you.